Okay.
Okay, can you still hear me? Did it auto
Yeah.
change the mic, or is it good?
Seems to be good. Yeah.
Ah, this sounds way better. Man, this place is so noisy. Okay, so the question was, when making a thing, when to be different, when to be the same as everything else, in short. So, yeah, really good question, because it was a huge ongoing conversation when we worked on Superliminal. I guess there's no cool way in Hangouts to check if everyone can raise their hands and confirm that they've 1, played, and 2, adored, 3, also definitely reviewed on Steam Superliminal. If all of you haven't done that, that's the tax for being here tonight. Please review the game on Steam. So the interesting thing was, I'm a huge advocate for like trying to do something different and new as much as you possibly can. That is interesting, right? Like not just randomly different. And a really interesting thing with doing something different is that it's really hard to do something different because the video games audience at times can tend to be not politically, but adventurously quite conservative. And the thing we talked about a lot working Superliminal was like, how do we make sure that when we're surprising you as a player with something weird, right? Which, again, if anyone here has played the game, hopefully you're like, yeah, the game has lots of weird stuff in it. But the trick is, if it's all weird, you basically just go, I have 0 idea what the hell is going on. I'm like lost. There's no objectives. None of the controls do anything. Like the mouse makes me walk forward. You know, it's like all this like insane stuff that you could do. So we thought the trick was basically to like use that as a sort of like another layer of subversion. And so like keep your like interaction methodologies. That's not a real phrase. Let's just say that though. But keep your interaction methodologies very like set, and it's like everything works exactly the way you expect it's going to work until we do something which is like so radically weird that you're definitely like, okay, that was a weird thing, and I know that was supposed to be weird because everything else made sense up until this point. So a lot of it is like, I guess, a question of pacing is probably like another best way to look at it, of like setting that expectation for the player, not just to expect what they are doing, but to know to expect when they get something they didn't expect, if that makes sense. Not a lot of people deal in games that are like deliberately awkward to play for people. So it's a little studied area of the industry, but I think it's pretty good. Everyone who's saying it's good in the chat, you should listen to these people and you should all go buy it. But most importantly, review it. Tell all your friends to review it. Review every game you like on Steam. It is hugely important. You have no idea. It's more important than voting, maybe. I don't know. But okay.
I think that's a pretty cool answer, because I know a lot of time in game dev, you'll get the people who want to just start making everything different. You know, you have the people who want to make everything unique so their game stands out.
Totally.
Yeah, it's definitely a important distinction, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I think got another question I've lined up. Remember, everyone, you know, you could start asking questions in chat along with this.
Yeah, drop them in, go crazy.
Yeah.
Ask me really hard questions.
Oh, we got Edward Chang, our president, asking a question over here. He says he remembers seeing a post about Superliminal in the Unity subreddit. Were you involved in marketing at all?
Was I involved in marketing at all? Yes, I was involved in marketing at all. I planned a lot of the marketing that we did on Superliminal. So we worked pretty closely with an external marketing company that I have known and worked with in previous teams and over the course of my life, whose name is Evolve PR. They are based out of Vancouver or British Columbia, somewhere at least, maybe Victoria. And they're super good, really good people. The cool thing with Superliminal was we don't really like marketing the game. As I'm sure all you hardcore Superliminal fans are aware, there is no official Superliminal Discord. If you'd like Superliminal enough to make a Discord, thank you so much. I don't want to know about it. Go have a good time with it. Enjoy your lives. So the cool thing with Superliminal was it's so weird that it kind of markets itself, and it also self-selects very well. Like people look at it and then they go, "Oh my god, this looks terrible. There's like no guns. You don't get to kill anyone. It's a stupid game for babies." And then really smart people see it and they go, "Yeah, this is my kind of game." And then they start playing it, and then they review it on Steam, as you all know. That's always happens. But yeah, so the marketing for us was very much like, let people, always we're careful like not to let people sort of imagine that there's a game that's not going to be there. We tried to be very clear about what you're going to get. And if you look at our trailers, we try to do a good job of like, they're always very flat, but they do like a stupid thing, which is sort of the ethos of life and Superliminal in general. Yeah, and I think it worked pretty well. I don't think anyone's ever accused us of like lying about what the game was, which I think is a tricky thing to do. Sometimes in marketing, you're so keen to like please the public, but really, when you think about how many people there are, there's a lot of people in the world. So you should just really appeal to some people, and then they'll be your marketers. That's a good marketing lesson for me as the professor of marketing. Let the world be your audience.
All right. That's pretty cool. So yeah, we got a few more questions, I think, about Superliminal. We got people asking. I'm gonna go around the questions, keep things, like more of grouped. But yeah, Raph is saying how the game seems to be an amazing success, and been played by big streamers, and then he's asking which aspects of the release were most influential to its success.
God, that's a really good question. If I knew that answer, I would never have to worry about anything ever again, because I would know exactly how to succeed 100% of the time. I think so. A big thing we wrestled with a lot with Superliminal was when people saw it, they would very often compare it immediately with Portal, which is in some ways like a massive compliment. Like it's pretty great to have someone say your game's as good as like what is maybe arguably like one of the most influential games of like the last 10, 15 years. But it's also terrifying, because then you're basically like, well, all we can do is fail from here, because there's no way we're going to like, we can't deliver you Portal again. Like it's already out there, it's already in your head. Like people forget, I think, how like weird of an idea Portal was, and how it sort of kind of wasn't really a success at the start. Like it only kind of cropped up over time as people were like, what is this weird thing that came with the orange box? And then people said it was good, and then everyone started saying they thought it was always good, which I don't think is always true. But yeah, so I think we tried to do a good job of like, we didn't want to, like, it would be stupid to say, oh, the game is nothing like Portal. If you like Portal, you're stupid. You shouldn't buy Superliminal. But we also didn't want to seem like we were going, hey, oh my God, like we love Portal and we made this game, and hopefully if you love Portal, you'll love it too. No one believes me, but I swear, like I still have not played Portal 2. I was too scared to touch it while we were working on Superliminal, because I didn't want any of it getting into my head. So I just like kept my memories of Portal from whenever I first played it. I think it was back in like 2012 or something. I was pretty late to the Portal game. Yeah, and it was like, for us, it was always a thing of like, every time someone mentioned a game, we were almost like, okay, that game is now illegal to like look at or consider, because you just don't, it's like too scary. You don't want to get like too similar, and when you're in, I'm sure you're all wildly creative people, right? You're all stupid enough to be interested in video games. But when you're like in a creative mode, you're just sort of like a sponge for everything around you. And you end up like, people are always like, oh, I love that like reference to whatever. And you're like, that wasn't a reference. Like, I didn't even know that was anything we were doing. But you just suck stuff up, So yeah, I think the most influential thing for us with the success is probably just dumb luck and actually managing to get the game out, which is a battle in itself. If any of you, we showed the game at PAX, and this guy who was like 16 or 17 came up to us and told us he had been a fan of Superliminal, or at that point he's in simulation technology, his entire life, because he'd like first seen a video of it in like like when he was 11 or something, and it was just like, oh my god, like why are we taking so long to finish this game? But we did it in the end, and it all worked out fine. Thank the Lord.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we got another question from Mike. He's asking about your approach to puzzles or level design, and he's curious about your thought process when designing a good challenge. Like, where do you start that? He's wondering.
Yeah, gosh, that is a huge question. It's really hard to pull apart. But I guess I'll try to go into some parts of it. So we tried to, as much as we could, we tried to divide the levels out into what we called puzzles and what we called surprise moments, right? And so it's not, it's not such the case that like every level's 50% one, 50% the other, but we try to keep like a decent balance. And like the first third of the game is more puzzle than surprise moment. And then we go more surprise moment, and then like totally bananas stuff at the end, and then kind of combine that with a lot of the puzzles from earlier. But a big thing for us was, so it's really hard when you're making a puzzle game to know if the puzzle is a good puzzle. So don't ever make a puzzle game. It's like the most punishing thing in the world, because you can't ask anyone what it's like, because once you show them it, you can never show them it again. So you have a thing, I don't know what you folks study, but there's a thing called Kleenex testing. I don't know why it's called Kleenex testing. Maybe someone in here knows, but basically the principle is that you can only test someone one time. You can only really get someone's feedback once. And then after that, it's too colored by like what they saw before, and like then sort of like a desire on their part probably to like not tell you that they still think it's bad, like they didn't like it the first time. So we would do a lot of work on like trying to figure out, is this puzzle fun? Like fun was obviously always the number one thing, right? But it was like, is it hard? Okay, is it challenging in a cool way? Like, do I feel smart when I solve this? Do I feel like there are ways to solve this that aren't immediately clear? And will that feel good, or will that feel like something went wrong? And if so, are we okay with that? Like, it was sort of a lot of this ongoing stuff. It wasn't uncommon to sit for like three of us at least, to sit in a room and sort of not really argue, but just kind of like very frustratedly like jab at each other about this stuff and be like, do you think that's like, is that the right way to do it? And someone would be like, well, yeah, no, I think it's really cool. And then someone else would be like, well, it took me like 20 minutes to look at it and I couldn't figure it out. And yeah, I think a lot of it was just, you get a sense for it. I mean, over time, the thing is like, you kind of start with, let's say like, I don't know, 50 random ideas, right? And then over time, you sort to realize that, well, this one and this one kind of go together pretty well, and they're not too similar. They're not too similar that they could sit in the same like level or something, and that could work pretty well. Okay, well, if you were doing this and this, like then maybe we could grab that other one that kind of didn't really work, and we can tweak that. But like, we were still tweaking puzzles up until launch. That's not even remotely true, because we're still patching puzzles now. Like, I think it's like, there's one puzzle in the game that involves a hallway that if anyone has seen the hallway, they should know what that is. And I don't know if anyone has patched the puzzle before. I'm sure someone has, but yeah, we've patched that puzzle like 3 times because we're trying to find out how to make it clear to people without being too obvious, but it's also like kind of a cool thing. So it was sort of, for us, it was like, we called that like the boss battle of the game. It's like, if you can solve this, like if you're able to walk down a hallway successfully, then you've like, you've learned how to play Superliminal. But yeah, puzzle design is a huge nightmare. Almost every other part of the game is like easy in a sense, because you can kind of lean on a lot of stuff in the past and things that have worked to do a good job. But with puzzle design, it's so tough, because anything that seems too similar to something in the past is probably not the way you want to go, and then anything you've never seen before is like, I don't know if it's good or bad, right? So yeah, it's tough.
I guess a similar question from William is, how do you make sure people understand the resizing mechanic?
I mean, for us, that's the entire first level of the game. Like the whole point of that first level was we wanted to not put a tutorial in the game, but we wanted every subsequent room to kind of teach you different things about how things worked, and kind of build on those mechanics in good ways, and then pull the rug out from you in ways that were fun, but all very contained. Like everything is like, I mean, I still don't really know if anyone gets this, but the whole point is the first level is Portal. Like, we're just pretending that you're in Portal. Like, that's why it looks like a lab, that you're never there ever again, because everyone said it looked like Portal. We were like, wouldn't it be funny if, like, you booted the game and it literally just, like, loaded up Portal? Like, and then the next level was actually our game. But yes, like, the whole idea for us is, like, we put you in a lab, and in that way you're kind of thinking, like, okay, yeah, this is, you know, obviously they love Portal. They've just made another Portal-like game. And then immediately after, like, that first level, you never see that, you know, that environment art or anything ever again. I don't think anyone's ever mentioned that, but there you go. Now you all know it. These are the big secrets behind Superliminal. Copy everyone else, but do it intentionally, because then no one can arrest you.
Yeah. We have Austin asking if you guys self-published, or I mean, if you did do that, then why did you decide to do that?
Sure. We did self-publish the game. We did it because we were lucky enough or unlucky enough to have to figure it out by ourselves. We did have a publisher for Superliminal early on, and then we just couldn't really agree on a lot of things, and eventually we sort of amicably probably decided that we weren't going to do anything together anymore. Now it's pretty scary and exciting, but the over-under was, it was scary because we were basically like, okay, well, if the game does badly, now we're totally hosed because it's just us and there's no one to sort of blame. Because it's nice to have someone to point at and be like, it's probably their fault and not your fault, you know? But there was no one else, and then fortunately the game did really well, so we didn't have to worry about it. But I don't know, I think working with a publisher is probably a good idea if you really, 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 really don't want to do a bunch of stuff that is just like legitimately miserable work. But if you really have problems with relinquishing control to other people, then self-publishing is very good, because you can be as weird and annoying as you want to be, because you're the one you get to be weird and annoying too. And if it works out, it's great, but it is definitely not to be done lightly, I guess, as they say. We're very lucky. I would feel nervous to recommend anyone else to do it, but I think it is probably a good idea, but you definitely have to be weird enough to really want to do everything.
Okay, similar question from Austin. What was the hardest part of the process of actually getting the game released?
I think the answer is probably in the question. The hardest part was getting it released. When I joined the project, I think it had been in process for 4 or 5 years. And I'd known 2 of the members of the team for a while. It's like, quick jump to the side story. I run a co-working space in Seattle as well as all this other stuff. And so they were working out of my office, and I was watching them in this sort of weird, like, it feels like it was a year. It probably wasn't that long, but I felt like they were just constantly in these like 8-hour-long meetings, you know, just like discussing what to do with the game and that kind of thing. And nothing meaningful seemed to be changing. And so I called Albert over to my place one night, and I just sort of told him that I was worried about him. It was like, do you realize that, like, this isn't maybe going as well as you wanted? And he was like, yeah, I don't know what to do. I kind of don't really know what we're, like, I don't know how lost we are, because I do not know how to get back to where we're supposed to go, right? And so thus began the adventure of sort of slicing up the game. A very useful thing that we did in the process of finishing the game, or like figuring out what the game was, is it's really, really hard to sit down and ask yourself, what's your game gonna be, or like what's it gonna be about, or whatever. A really, really weirdly, I don't know why your brain works like this, or at least my brain does, hopefully this translates. It's really easy to decide what your game is not. So if you sit down and make a list of things that it's definitely not gonna be, you slowly back yourself into a corner of the stuff that you care about. But it's kind of hard for you to see it, because you're basically like, well, I like a lot of stuff, so I don't really know which things I like enough that I want to make a game about them, right? But I mean, to pick like a stupid example that we obviously harp on a lot, but it's like, there's no guns in the game, right? Like, we knew there were going to be no guns, so that helped us make some decisions that we made obviously pretty early on in the process. But that kind of thing really helped. We had lots of discussions about how funny to be, how not funny to be, like when do you want to be dry? Did we want to go for like an emotional overtone and things like that? But yeah, the painful process was just actually getting it out. And especially to come back to the self-publishing part, like doing all of that stuff yourself sucks. It is so bad, but it's also the only way to do it if you do it on your own. So you just have to sit there and like, yeah, a lot of game development is actually not that fun. So I hope you all realize that. But it is worth it, probably.
Oh yeah, we got some positive comments in chat,
Cool.
and we also, we have Angelina, I believe, is saying she hopes she's not delving too far into the design stuff, but when working with the design team, what is an experience like, or like what's important to you? I hope I'm asking that correctly.
Angeline or Angelina, do you want to give that in your own terms?
Yeah,
I'm not sure what you mean.
Sure. That the question I wrote it down out of being like, oh, this is so cool. I can finally be a very cool developer. I'm an animation student, so of course I'm going more towards the art side. But when you're working with if you have before had the experience with working with a design team such as like animators, modelers, that sort of stuff, like what do you want to see? How is the experience like working with them? Like what is important to you when working with a team? Like flexibility, like that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the first thing I would say about that is we would never refer to that as a design team. They would just be artists. That's probably, again, a very bad thing to hear as an artist. But
it's not a bad thing. It's fine.
But if you don't stare at the like miserable stuff that you write on the computer, then you're an artist. That's it. You're lucky enough that you don't have to do the stupid things. You get to be an artist. So our art director at Superliminal is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man named Steve Allen. You can look him up. His ArtStation is 208.artstation.com, I think. And he's worked on Prey and BioShock and stuff. And he just had such an awesome portfolio. And he's a total maniac, which was really good because we needed someone with like good crazy energy. Steve's superpower, and the thing that like I really, really loved at working with him, so like hopefully this helps you, I don't know, but was that Steve would just like go off like on like he would like ping us on like a Friday and be like, hey, I had this crazy idea. Anyway, don't worry about it. I'll show you on Monday. And he would just like over the course of the weekend build this like totally like, and I don't mean rude, but like totally like inappropriate idea for the game, right? Like this whole scene, you like do the whole thing and block it all out. And it would just like look insanely cool, but it like didn't fit at all. But it was just so good because he was just like so freely able to go do his own thing. And then I liked that because I liked the feeling of having to rein someone's craziness in rather than like pull the craziness out of them. It's good when people are just unhinged professionally. So yeah, I think just like it's probably harder when you're starting, right? Like when you're junior, you don't necessarily want to appear unreliable, maybe like that's like the right term, but just being like wildly creative and like prolific to an alarming degree is like always very useful. My huge advice to anyone who's young and still has a lust for life and still does things for fun is like just do it all the time. Like do so much of it and never worry about the stuff that sucks because nobody ever remembers it. Like you can make tons of crap stuff, and then as soon as you make one amazing thing, everyone will say you're like an overnight success and they'll hate you and all this stuff. And you don't have to worry about it because like you already know that you spent your like 15 years of like, up till 4 a.m. every night, on your Cintiq or whatever you do your animation stuff on. But yeah, like I think just like learning how to stand on your own 2 feet is super cool. And like when you're in the right team will want you to like do that, right? Because the last time people have to spend deciding on whether your idea is a good or bad idea, like yada yada, is just like it's way better if you're just like, hey, I thought of this thing the other night, so I just mocked it up anyway. What do you think? And then they go, oh yeah, cool. Like, let's do that. So For me, it's like just in almost in any role or discipline whatsoever, my favorite characteristics are like being unstoppably able to do stuff and also very open to listening when people like do or don't like what you want, right? Or what you've made. Nobody really wants to work with anybody who's like very stuck, I guess, to what they do, right? Like I think my friend who's a designer who worked on Superliminal too, he went to DigiPen, and I think they did a thing where they learned how to make clay mugs, and they spent like all day getting really good at this, and then the professor just like walked down the like whole line of them and just smashed all their mugs in front of them and was like, nobody will ever care about your art. This will happen to you for the rest of your career. Just get used to it. It's like you will make stuff that will be destroyed, and that's just part of the experience, right? Like, never get too tied to what's happening in the moment, and always, look at it as like, oh, well, I learned how to do this weird, like, nodes thing I'd never done before in Blender or something, right? Like, that's what's super useful, because then next time you go, oh, wait, I have an idea about that, or a grudge that I can finally settle. So that would be my feedback on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure, no worries.
Oh yeah, we got a question from Kevin. He's asking about more technical things. So he imagines that there was a lot of projection or teleportation math involved, and he's asking about optimization issues you may have encountered.
Yeah. By the way, am I becoming like an evil villain that you cannot see my face?
I mean,
am I mildly evil? Let me see if I can put a light on. Also, remember, I just moved in here. I don't know where the lights are, so this could be a couple of seconds. Here we go.
Yeah, sure.
I did it. Won.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, we see you loud and clear.
That's better, right?
Our ears, yes.
Yes. See me with your ears. So the question was optimization. Did we do optimization? Is that the question? The answer to that
he was asking,
yes.
About the maths and the teleportation, the projections.
All of the unbelievably great optimization, particularly to do with the portals. Yes. Like, also, we tried to never use the word portal publicly, but the doors that you walk through we always call them portals. They were all saved in the last sort of 2 months of development by Phil Fortier. You can see him in the credits. You can look him up on Twitter. His Twitter is Icefall Games. The funny thing about Phil is he mostly works on like 2D sprite-based text adventure games for fun. He's just like an amazing graphics programmer, just like for laughs. It's crazy. But yeah, he spent a lot of time towards the end. If any of you bought the game on Steam, which I know a lot of you have, and you've used a level editor, Phil basically built that entire thing himself in the space of about a month or two. He's amazing. He's an amazing man. It would be remiss of me to claim in any way to know anything about what he did. He's one of the guys who stares at the words on the screen. I don't know how it works. Put the game on one side, and then like the better game comes out the other side.
Yeah. Okay, I have two, I guess, similar questions, but they're a bit different. One's from William, one's from another question we had prepared. William's asking about, do you design levels or puzzles around the narrative or vice versa? And the similar one is, in the design process, do you consider the emotion should be feeling? And what is your process for designing and testing emotion? So we got emotion question and sort of a narrative question.
Yeah, so actually, those are a bunch of good questions that are kind of hard for me to think about in the abstract. Definitely, I mean, my like major focus from a design or life perspective when making games is like, it doesn't really matter what I want to do. It matters if like someone cares enough or is like into it enough to want to play it. And so I feel very beholden to the person who's playing the game. I'm always thinking about like, what are they going to be doing? Like, are they going to think this bit sucks? Like, why are we doing this bit? Like, who's this? Is this like just something cool that we can do? Like, who cares about that? Let's like cut that and do something else instead. So I think definitely like, if you could call that emotion, like, I guess that's something we're thinking about a lot, right? In terms of like engagement or response or just like I mean, I guess just wanting to make the player feel like we thought about them a lot and wanted them to have a good time. Like some of it for me is I have a bit of a music background, and so I used to like play concerts and things. And I think a lot of that is still in my brain of like, I always feel just like really grateful that anyone's there. So I'm just sort of like, I want to make sure that you don't feel like I ripped you off. So I want to give you as good of a time as possible. In terms of like approaching, I don't know whether it was covering like puzzles or surprise moments or whatever from like which angle we approached them from. Puzzles were usually pretty solidly like these would exist as sort of vacuum Unity scenes of just like, okay, here's a little room with this thing, and maybe we could do something with that. I don't know. But there were plenty of things we had that were just like, oh, this is like just a really stupid thing. Like, what if we did that? Would that be funny? And then we would sort of make a bunch of them, and inevitably none of them were really funny. And then some of them would be funny, and they made it into the game. But if you've played the game, which all of you definitely have, the third level, which is like the spooky level, has a part where like you finally get to a light, but then like or a flashlight, and when you click it, it just turns the light off. Or no, is it a flashlight? I don't know. Or a knife? Something happens. Anyway, it's all about surprising you, right? But that was like, there was no puzzle element to that, right? We just thought it was funny to be like, oh, now you've been spooked, and suddenly you think you can get a light. Oh wait, no, you can't. It just turns off.
All right. We have a question from Edward asking about how long the Superliminal development cycle was.
Yeah, I think I touched on that a little bit earlier. It was it was something like the guts of 7 years. It was pretty long. It's not a recommended length for developing a video game. But these, like, I was going to say the serious development, that's not really a fair way to describe it. But when I joined in February, of 2018. Well, I'm going to die or something. I joined in February 2018, and I remember in June of that year, we all got together, because also like two or three of the team were remote, but three of us, like core three of us were in Seattle. And I got everyone together and kind of sat down in front of this table. We had this projector in my office, and I was like, we're going to make this entire game between now, June 2018, and December 31st. I was like, basically, the sooner we can finish, the sooner Christmas break begins. It is up to you guys to argue less so that we can get this game out. And in that 6 months, we ended up, that kind of like built what we always referred to as like the bad version of the game. Like it was basically like, if anything ever went wrong, we had this USB stick. You could like smash the wall and get the USB, and that was like the bad version of the game that we could just release that at any time. Surprise, surprise, it was not a very good version of the game, but it was like a provable, like it worked end to end. There was a story, there was stuff happened, like a lot of stuff changed in the subsequent year, give and take like 10, 11 months of development after that. But it was really good after that to have a thing to refer back to and say like, is this, so what we're doing now like better or worse than what we had before? That like amalgamation process is just such a mess. It's so hard to figure out where you are in any of it.
Okay. A question from, I think it's Tryman. How do you balance both game design and producer responsibilities?
Very badly. That's how I do it. Basically, one of my weaknesses or superpowers is that I get really bored really easily. So I like to constantly have new things to focus on. That's why I can't do art, because art takes like a lot of focus. You just sit down and just draw the same line again and again and keep hitting Control-Z. It's like, it's horrible. Whereas I like to think about things in like aggregate, like big thoughts, galaxy thoughts. And a lot of the, like, when you're a producer in like a AAA studio, I'm not going to hate on all the AAA producers, but like your job is very contained. You're basically you're like responsible for maybe like 5 to 10 people, right? And you're basically just reporting on how they're doing, stuff they need to get help on, yada, yada, yada. In a indie team like ours, which I mean, at its largest, I think was 7 or 8 people. The producer role is like just everything. Like I was business person, marketing person, producer person, and to be clear, not the lead designer. Like I was the like sort of the designer beside Logan and Albert who would keep saying like, wait, we shouldn't do that, but I was also I don't have any time to do this thing, but like here's what I think we should do with it. And then usually Logan would agree with me, Albert would disagree, and then over time we would figure it out. But yeah, like a lot of my design stuff was giving feedback on things or thinking about ideas. I guess I wrote the story. I forget about that. It's such a roller coaster. You forget about all the things you're doing because you're just doing so much stuff. Basically, it's like your whole brain is occupied by the game for however long it was, 2 or 3 years. And then when it's gone, there's like part of your brain is also gone, unfortunately. It never comes back. So choose your battles wisely.
We have another question from before.
Yeah.
Since you have experience being self-employed and managing your own progress, can you think of any useful advice for students managing and working on personal projects on their own time?
Yes, I do. So much advice about that. So firstly, something I always tell people who are starting out, right? I think you're a little bit further along because you've already decided to do something about it. You're studying it, yada, yada, yada. Is back to my earlier thing about being prolific. You need to choose 3 years of your life that you will never get back, and you have to go ham on yourself and your ability to get work done for those 3 years. This is not your grades. I don't care about what a professor told you did well. It is about yourself. You must crack your head open and just get everything you can do out as fast as possible. Because the more stuff you do, the more like it's a cheap way to describe it, but it's like every time you do something, it's like buying a lottery ticket, right? So you just keep buying as many lottery tickets as you can, and everyone's won the lottery, right? Like I'm sure all of you have won the lottery at some point. We've all won the lottery. The more times you buy tickets, the bigger your chances are, right? The other part of it is something that I was bad at for a long time and then learned from someone else is if you're lucky enough to be your own boss, be a good boss. Like don't be horrible to yourself. It's pretty exhausting. And it's very easy, I think, especially when you are starting out and you're very, hopefully at least, like very hungry to get that big break, whatever it's going to be, right? It's really, really easy to keep focusing on all the times that you don't get the big break or like all the times it's not working and, all that kind of incredibly fun stuff. But I don't know, I feel super naive to say it, but it has mostly proven true across everyone I have known, at least in the game industry, which is that if you just keep going, eventually, like, I don't know, someone feels sorry for you and then it just works out. But but that's what it will feel like to you. But actually, they'll be like, "Oh my God, you're so good! Like, I can't believe we found you." And you're like, "I can't believe you found me." It's like, so grateful for it. Yeah, it's really tough, and I mean, it's only going to get tougher over time. Like, it's super useful to keep on top of what's happening out in the wider world. If you're like whatever your discipline is, like, get very good at it. That's like a surprising piece of advice, right? And then number 2 is try to like, you don't have to necessarily focus on this, but try to always be aware of like what's happening in what you're doing. Like, what are crazy new weird things people are doing with animation, right? Do you think it's interesting? Hopefully you think it's interesting. Do you want to do it? It doesn't matter if you don't, but it's super useful if you're in a team and you can go, oh, I was like watching the SIGGRAPH talk the other day about whatever the hell they talk about at SIGGRAPH, I don't know, like videos or something. And then you can like bring that advice into your group, and that's when you shine in your discipline, right? Is that you're like, hey, I'm the de facto expert at this stuff, right? And here's the stuff that I've learned. Those are the things that are just like super, super invaluable. It's just like absorb everything, and then occasionally, don't work all the time, despite doing all the work all the time. Also, in your other time outside of all the time that you're working, do things that are relaxing for a little bit, and then back to the craziness again. It's hard. It's a hard world, but you know, you'll get there. It's fine. It works out.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had other guest speaker, I think, another semester talk about burnout a bit, but yeah.
Yeah, it'll happen. I mean, like the burnout thing is, I don't know. It's tough. I'm reasonably sure that every single person who worked on Superliminal is suffering from, has suffered from, or does continue to suffer from burnout to some extent. I mean, like I said earlier, like the moment where you decide to say we're not going to make the game anymore because the game is now done is like not a real moment. Like there's no time that ever actually happens, especially in a smaller team. Like whenever, I don't know, David Activision or whatever tells you that you don't make the game anymore, then I guess you just don't make the game anymore. But in a small team, it's so easy just to keep going like, oh, I had this cool idea. Oh, yeah, if I go back to that level, I can like, you know, just tweak this like stupid material that's just slightly not the way I want it to be and I want it to look better. And that stuff's, it's killer. It's super hard because everything feels like it matters and it totally doesn't because it's like 0.0001% of what you've done. But at that point, you're so like, it would suck if like that turned out to be the reason people thought the game was bad, right? And that's the curse. I don't know how to solve that apart from, I don't know, only make your games with battery power, and then you just can't do anything good and you can't do anything long. So that's good.
Okay. We have a question from the RAF. You have a lot of experience in virtual reality games. What do you think of this technology going forwards?
I think it's pretty cool. I mean, for those of you that I don't know, didn't stalk me or whatever, I worked at Oculus at Facebook and on VR stuff, and I worked at a VR studio, Radio Games, for a little while before that. I think VR is super amazing and super cool. Part of the fun of working at Oculus was that I got to do a lot of things I wanted to do in a world where nobody was worried about how to make money out of it, because, spoiler, by the way, Facebook has a lot of money, in case none of you were aware, but they're doing okay. So it was pretty fun to be able to just sort of work with a bunch of like unbelievably smart game people and just be like, hey, like, can we do this? Like, how would you do that? And someone's like, oh, like, you know, like, again, like all back to that stuff. Like it was one time I brought this like cool, oh, wait, because I'm moving, I have all my weird stuff sitting here. So this is a Lytro Illum. It's a very cool camera. You can go look it up. It has one lens and it takes photos that you can zoom after the fact. It is the coolest thing on earth. It totally failed. Google bought the company and then shut them down. But anyway, one of the engineers at Facebook, his professor at university was the guy who went on to start that company. And we were like talking about it one day and he was like, oh yeah, like you could do that. And we started thinking this whole other thing we were going to do. Anyway, so I think VR is super amazing. I think cool things are going to happen with it at some point. It's hard right now because Facebook buying Oculus made everyone think VR was sort of like ready to go. And I don't think it really was ready to go at that point, which is like 2016 or something. But I mean, if any of you have tried it in any like serious capacity, it's pretty cool. I mean, a lot of the stuff that's there is a little bit trivial on the design front, and that's kind of what I thought was interesting to play around with. But it'll get there. I think it's like sort of having its, whatever the VR equivalent of like an arcade cabinet time is. Like it's lots of like fun, weird little experiences right now, but there's potential to do insanely amazing things, and we'll get there. Like one day you'll just sort of be told by someone to take off your headset and you'll realize that your entire life you're in VR. Mark Zuckerberg took you years ago. You didn't know about it.
Okay. We got William with another question. He asked what, you know, being an external consultant for like NeoCab and Church in Darkness was like. Like, what does it mean, look like? How does that differ from being like in a part of the team?
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's in some ways it's a super fun job, super fun work to do, because you get to jump into like a huge mass in the middle of it, and there's nothing that like none of it will stick to you because you're like external. You get to leave afterwards. But the hard part is that because you aren't deeply entrenched with the team, everything that you say feels like it's like, well, you don't really know what it's like. You haven't been here for such a long time. Not to be clear, these teams were like weird to work with or anything, but it's just, you have a whole bunch of stuff in your head from working on a project for so long. And when someone's like, you ever thought about doing this? They're like, yeah, guess what? I did think about that a lot. Here's why we can't do it. But I really like that external work. Again, for me, the motivating factor is always like looking at what someone has and then trying to figure out, like, are there pieces of it that don't cohere? Is that a word? Let's do that. That don't cohere. Like a lot of the work on Superliminal was similar. It was just like there was a bunch of cool ideas, but it felt like someone was kind of showing you a bunch of like the little tech demos they'd made. And that wasn't really enough to make, like, again, to come back to my, like, how do you make the player feel like they had a good time? So yeah, I feel like with games, it's always such a challenge. I used to have a friend who talked about how, like, his biggest horror while working on games was like, what if the game was like actually at its best a month ago and we just didn't realize it, right? Because you don't know, you're so close to it, and you're so focused on all this stuff. So sometimes the external thing is really useful, like not from my perspective being external, but from considering an external consultant to be just like a fresh pair of eyes on what you're doing. And especially when it's someone who has no, like nothing to gain or lose from it. I wasn't getting like a percentage cut of how those games did or anything, right? So my honesty had a certain level of value to it because I was able to go, hey, here's where I think like these are scary things for me about what you're doing right now, and here are things that I think are really cool that you should maybe focus a little bit more on. But yeah, ultimately you just gotta do it, and then some stuff changes, some stuff doesn't, and you're just like, cool, all right, fair enough. Ultimately, it's their project. You want them to do what they want to make. So.
Okay. We don't seem to have any more questions in chat. We do have a few questions we had earlier, but if anyone has any last questions, we can start wrapping up. If you have anything you need to do still today, because it is hitting the hour mark.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you all studying game design, or what is this? What is the
so we
structure
are
here?
The Game Development Club at San Jose State. I don't believe San Jose State has an official major for it, but I'm not sure about minors in the development. We do have a wide variety, though, of majors. Yeah, if you look in the chat, you could see.
Data science, nice.
Yeah, we have quite a few, So yeah, we have art people, we have CS, we have software, we have all the various types of the art. Yeah, data science, and I think we have a few other people who are just interested in gaming and game design and whatnot. Okay,
so you're all doing this. You're all sitting on this call like for fun, basically.
No one's making us. I mean, yeah.
That's a very good sign. I saw someone in the chat mention that they are an aspiring biz dev artist. My top tip for you for the rest of your life is stop saying aspiring and just say you're a biz dev artist. There's like no law, no one knows. It's not like you're not like an aspiring brain surgeon. Like there's like rules about that, but there's not rules about biz dev. Yeah, you should all just get together into the small groups and then make stuff and ship it. I always tell people just put games on Steam and itch and things, and like functionally, if 10 people buy your game, you'll be doing pretty awesome. But the point is not to like have the big cool breakthrough moment. It's just to get into the habit of just like normalizing the whole process to yourself. Like I saw someone mention, hang on, I'm going through the chat now. Someone said, how do you get a game designer job if you don't have professional experience?
Is camera pause?